and welcome to the latest episode of AC's Talking Bowls. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's felt a long week actually, although nothing's happened at all thanks to lockdown. It's been a bit rubbish, hasn't it? We've not been able to get out much or do anything, but there we go. I've been out to work, hence the collar and tie. Putting myself at risk for the good of the kids and the public and all the rest of it, but apparently there's a vaccine imminent, so that'll be alright. Minus 70 degrees it's got to be stored at. I don't know how that's going to work. Anyway, that's not for me to worry about. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoy this video, please hit that like button, and if you're not already a Bowls buddy and a member of this wonderful community of ours, please hit the subscribe button. It's absolutely free of charge, and don't forget to hit the notification bell for notifications of new content on the channel, which at the minute is just every Wednesday because nothing's happening, no bowling going on, that's for sure. Not a lot for you this week, so this may be a bit shorter than normal, but we'll see how we get on, because you know I can talk. So since we last spoke, there's been another Waterloo 50-50 draw, and although I don't think a decision's been made just yet, it does look like they're so close to getting that 75 grand they're trying to raise. I think it's £68,500, something like that. So tantalisingly close, really. In the scheme of things, 7.5 grand doesn't. 7.5 grand, yeah, 7.5 grand, 6.5 grand doesn't seem an awful lot of money. But I suppose if you haven't got it, then it is. But so close, and I don't actually 100% know when the decision will be made. I'm guessing before Christmas, because obviously they'll have to get work underway so that they can reopen the green next March, April time. But as soon as I know anything, you'll know anything. So I think that's quite positive, really. Very, very close. 10% short of what they need. Around that, anyway. And that's really the only thing I've heard of on the Bowls grapevine. Not a lot else happening. I don't suppose there's a lot of planning you can do for a situation where, you know, we don't know what's happening from one day to the next, really. I know there's a few people already got Bowls competitions out on the Facebook page, getting entries. In two minds about that, but I can understand it from the organisers' point of view. They want to get the entries in, get the money in, and get it all sorted. And I suppose it's easier to give money back than to get it in. But in these times, troubled times, well, you don't know what you're doing, do you, from one day to the next. So anyway, fingers crossed that the competitions can take place and we can get back to some level of normality. So what I wanted to do is just quickly run through some of the comments that I got on my YouTube channel last week. Please comment below if there's anything you hear in this video, see, or points you want to raise, points you disagree with, whatever. Comment. I will see them, and I'll if they're interesting, I'll say something about them. So I'm just going to quickly run through a few. Chris Dodd said, great stuff Andy, spot on about the parks, and I remember it exactly as you mentioned. The park, you would look after the green and hand out tickets for playing an hour on the green and using a set of their woods. In the summer there are always new people giving it a go for something to do. He lives in Australia now, playing flat green bowls. That sounds fantastic. Used to live in Cheshire. Joe Carr, ex of Bury, but now of the Fylde Coast. He mentions the old works teams that factories used to have, Many factories had their own recreation facilities, including bowling greens, and other companies sort of sponsored their bowling teams for workers at their factories. And I know round here there used to be a lot of workshop cricket teams that played midweek. Not so many bowls teams, but there was one from Bacup, Sutton's. That was a shoe factory. Trying to think. Oh, for a time, Holland's Pies. Holland's had a team up at Sunnybank, and I know that over in Huddersfield they still have a works league, but I'm not sure if they're actually connected to factories and businesses, or whether they're just sponsored. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, that was a great way for people to try something new, start a job somewhere, get involved on the social side of things, have a game of bowls. So yeah, I think that has had a big effect. And he names one, he says here, I got into bowling for my works team in my mid-30s, Wolstenholmes in Radcliffe, with the crook Jimmy Darby's dad Alan. It's nice, isn't it? Yeah, so it was a way of I think that, you know, the mid-20s to mid-30s is the age group we are really, really short of, and I think the works teams were a great way of getting them interested. But unfortunately, due to the lack of manufacturing in the country, there ain't many works teams left, and I'm not sure if there's many places have the bowling greens anymore. No, Rolls Royce in Barn Oldswick, I think that's still there, and they have a lovely green there. But a lot of places were connected to works. Of course, what's it called now? At Huddersfield, it used to be Huddersfield ICI, then it used to be Zenica, and now it's it'll come to me. I can't remember the name. And that was an old works place, but I think it's been taken over. It's Huddersfield Football Club, as it now is, the training facilities. There's only one green there now, the front green. The back green was cut down. I think it's gone now. In fact, they both might have gone. Not 100% sure there. Steve Walker asked any idea where to purchase the books by John Voss and A. Lundy and any other historical interest, as they are out of print. I know I got Ernest Lundy's book off a second-hand bookshop website, and I think I've seen John Voss's book on eBay before now. So all I can suggest is get on the second-hand websites, get on eBay, and just keep having a look at. There are quite a few bowls books. I got one written by a guy called G.T. Burroughs. I think he wrote it in the 1920s, and he was a former journalist / bowler from Manchester who ended up moving down to London and became quite a big name in the flat green game as a administrator and all the rest of it. And he reckoned that every lead in a flat green 4 should be a crown green bowler, because that's their game. They lead to the jack and they are the experts at it. So yeah. But the one thing that really sort of stood out for me was Alan Lancaster. He's always putting good comments on his Alan, and it's about an article dated the 4th of May 1734, and it's the first mention of a bowls comp. The numbers of entries or the winner was not shown, but in the newspaper it said the following: on Whitsuntide, 3rd of June 1734, at the Widow's Row at Salutation, a dark chestnut mare will be bowled for. The mare is 14 hands and 7 years old, with a value of £7 7 shillings. The horse is called Bloody Buttocks, interesting, and bred by Mr. Smith of Middleham, Yorkshire. Don't even know where Middleham is. I know where Downham is. The entrance will be 20 men paying 5 shillings each. Each entrance to pay on the day and registered between the hours of 10 AM and 2 PM. The runner-up to receive a bridle to the value of 2 shillings and 6. The following day, another bowls competition will be played for a hat to the value of half a guinea, with Mrs. Rowe adding the money not raised by entrance fees. Wow. Now, Alan doesn't mention how he went on in the competition. Little bit of a joke, sorry Alan. But absolutely amazing that they were playing bowls all the way back then, 1734, for a horse, and paying pretty good, pretty sizable entry fees. And the reason why that fascinates me is, I've said before, I'm really interested in the history of the game. And many years ago, my dad and I went to a stamp auction in Burnley. Now, my dad is a philatelist, or a stamp collector to me and you, and he was perusing the catalogue for us in the stamp auction, and I think it just said something like Crown Green Bowling Scrapbooks. Anyway, we went and had a look, and there were 4 scrapbooks that used to be owned by Robert Nixon, who was the proprietor of the Talbot Hotel right back in the very early days of the game. And these date back to 1908 and go up to 1913, I think it is. And the press cuttings and newspaper adverts, the results are in. It's got the results from the very first Waterloo, the who's playing, it's got all sorts of things in it. They're absolutely fascinating. I could spend hours talking about them and showing you them. And I've got one here. You can see it's quite old. And if I turn, just that's an example. So you've got lots of press cuttings, really small. Handicap sweep. The 36th annual Blackpool Bowling Handicap Sweepstakes will take place on the Talbot Bowling Green on Monday the September the 7th and the following days. Entry fee 5 shillings with £125 added to the prize money. Absolutely amazing. And to be honest with you, with the winter months coming on and the lack of bowling, I think I might be using these as the basis for a few of the things. I don't know if you can see that. It's called the Imps Bowling Tournament, and to be honest with you, it looks very similar to the present sort of bowling that goes on in competitions. A lot of swearing and betting and pie eating. But I was looking through these the other day, because my dad had passed them on to me. He was having a bit of a clear out, and he wanted me to just have hold of them. And this is from the Bowling and Curling magazine, dated October 1908. So that's 112 years ago. And this article caught my mind, and I thought, I'm going to read it to you. Greenlawn, writing on this in the Sporting Chronicle, makes some very pertinent remarks. He says, "One thing has struck me particularly of late, and that is the abuse of the rule relating to the use of the footer. Not only in professional but in amateur circles have I seen the regulations disregarded. The rule as it should be carried out by every fair player is that the toe of the man who is delivering a wood should rest on the mat, but I have repeatedly noticed that often the toe of the boot is dug into the turf inches in front of the starting mark. This is distinctly unfair and must be a great source of trouble to players who play over the indented surface. Curiously enough, I have never seen this abuse questioned, but it is nevertheless an important point, though it may be regarded by some as a small one. At the same time, I must emphasise the fact that the rule relating to this point ought to be strictly observed. A cricketer who drags his foot over the recognised crease, a billiard player who disregards the baulk line, a golfer who tees his ball otherwise than is provided by the rules are all penalised. And so it should be in bowls.
The amateur rule says emphatically that a ball not delivered with the toe on the footer may be stopped and played again, and if the offence be repeated, the ball must be taken off the green. This is plain and fair, not only to those concerned, but to those who have kept a green in order. I sincerely trust that in future, the careless disregard of what is after all a most vital regulation, look at it as you may, will be avoided. So, 112 years ago, people were moaning about people not putting the foot on the mat. It just shows that there's nothing new under the sun, and people have always tried, unwittingly or not, to gain an advantage. And I'm sure you guys out there have your own thoughts about keeping your toe on the mat, etc, etc. I have my own thoughts, and I'm not going to just air them at the minute, but I am a big believer in following rules, I must admit. But what I want you to remember is they were playing with a mat like this size. It was like bigger than my head, and they couldn't keep their foot on that. Now, I've always wondered when the rule was changed about the mat size. I think it was back in the early 80s. It was certainly just before I started bowling properly. It went from a 12-inch diameter to 6-inch diameter. I just wondered, I wonder now, what was the reasoning behind that? Is it just because players were fed up of carrying such a big mat, or what? Because certainly when it comes to damaging the green, the smaller mat doesn't really give much protection. The bigger mat obviously gives twice as much. But it's a funny one. It just tickled me, did that. I thought, there's a lot of things being said over the last few years about people not standing on the mat correctly. 112 years ago, exactly the same issue. And what I think I'll do is I'll go through these scrapbooks year by year, maybe even split them down more than that. There's some great stuff. There is some absolutely gold in there, really interesting. Some of the stories that they're saying, for instance, there was, I won't say everything, but a player being a well-known player being allowed to turn up after scratch time and play his game at the Talbot in 1908. So even back then they were double booking game. He'd had a 71-up game at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the Talbot games I think started at 1, but as long as there was still a game on when you turned up, you could still play. So somebody could be sat there all afternoon and you turn up, at 4 o'clock or whatever, and on you go. That's alright, innit? Anyway, but I'll talk more about that. The way the competition ran back then was vastly different to what we know now. So it'd be interesting just to go through some of them points and show you a little bit of the history. Hopefully, I might have to get my scanner out and see if I can scan some of the photos in and show you some of the people that were winning these back in the early 20th century. So I don't think I've a lot else to tell you. As I say, it's really quiet on the bowling scene at the minute with lockdown. So thank you for all the comments, thank you for the messages. Comment below if there's anything you want to see or hear me talk about, or anything I could, anything I can do for you really. Consider this your program as much as it is mine. Hopefully you'll join me next week. Hopefully you'll like the video as well, which is really important. But hopefully you'll join me next week. And remember, guys, to stay safe. Look after yourself, most importantly, especially now the cold nights are drawing in. Just be careful. And I hope to see you next week. Thanks for watching.